Marcus Chen stared at the concrete plug, sealing his family's century-old, the lifeline that had sustained for generations on this land. Pristine, suburban paradise. As he gripped the valve wrench tighter, Marcus whispered the words that would change everything. "You want to play with water rights? Let me show you who really." The morning sun cast long shadows across the Chen property as Marcus knelt beside what had once been his family's well. His calloused fingers traced the rough edges of the concrete that now sealed it shut like a tombstone. 3 days. It had been 3 days since the Willowbrook Estates Homeowners Association had committed what felt like murder. "Daddy, why is our water hole all filled up?" 8-year-old Lily's voice cut through his rage like a knife. Marcus turned to see his daughter standing in her school uniform, backpack slung over one shoulder, her dark eyes wide with the kind of innocent confusion that made his chest tight. If only it were that simple. Marcus rose to his feet, brushing concrete dust from his jeans. "Go get ready for school." As Lily skipped toward the house, a modest 2-story that had belonged to his grandfather, Chen, who'd bought this Fiviker plot when it was nothing but farmland outside the city limits. Back then, there were no subdivisions, no HOAs, no covenants about maintaining neighborhood aesthetics. His phone buzzed. A text from his wife Sarah, meeting with principal at 9. "Can you drop Lily off?" Another crisis. Their daughter had been acting out at school ever since the developers started circling their property like vultures, been pumping clean, sweet water just like it had for nearly a century. Today, it was sealed shut because the Willowbrook Estates HOA claimed it was an eyesore that violated their community standards. The irony would have been laughable if it weren't so infuriating. His family had been here first decades before. Willowbrook Estates was even a gleam in some developer's eye. But somehow, when the subdivision was built around their property, the Chen land had been mysteriously included in the HOA's jurisdiction through what their lawyer called aggressive boundary interpretation. "Mr. Chen?" He turned to find a young woman with a clipboard and a hard hat approaching. Behind her, a work crew was packing up concrete mixers and equipment. "I'm here to verify the well closure was completed according to municipal code." Marcus didn't shake her hand. According to whose code? That well was grandfathered in long before any of your codes existed. Miranda's expression softened slightly. "I understand your frustration, Mr. Chen, but once the HOA filed the complaint and the city determined the well posed a potential contamination risk to the municipal water supply, contamination risk." Marcus's voice rose. "That well has been feeding my family clean water for 4 generations. We've had it tested annually. The water quality is better than what comes out of your city taps." "I'm sure it is, but nothing." Marcus stepped closer, and Miranda instinctively took a step back and destroyed something that's been here since before your grandparents were born. "The HOA has legal authority. The HOA can kiss my ass." Miranda cleared her throat and made a note on her clipboard. "The closure is complete and up to code. You'll need to connect to city water within 30 days or face additional penalties." As she walked away, Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. 30 days to connect to city water, at his own expense, for a service he'd never needed and didn't want. He pulled out his phone and dialed his lawyer. "Patterson and Associates, this is Diane. I need to speak with Tom Patterson." "It's Marcus Chen." "Hold on, Mr. Chen." While he waited, Marcus walked to the edge of his property line, where a neat row of stakes marked the boundary between his land and the pristine lawns of Willowbrook Estates. Every house looked identical beige stucco with terracotta roofs, 3-car garages, and lawns. So green, they looked artificial. "Marcus, what's the update?" Tom Patterson's voice was tired. "Cemented it shut, Tom, just like you said they would." "I'm sorry, Marcus. I really am. And the city backed them up on the contamination angle." "What contamination? We've got test results going back 20 years. It doesn't matter. The mere potential for contamination is enough under the municipal code. And since your property is technically within the HOA boundaries, that's still bullshit, and you know it." Tom sighed. "Or you can sell to the developer. I know Peterson's been after your land and his latest offer." "I'm not selling, Marcus. Be practical. The offer is generous. You could buy a nice place in town, maybe put some money away for Lily's college. This is Lily's inheritance. For generations of my family have lived on this land. I'm not the one who's going to break that chain." Another pause. Then you need to connect to city water. I can help you navigate the permits, but it's going to run you about $15,000, maybe $20,000 with the connection fees. $20,000 to connect to water that was inferior to what he'd been getting for free. Marcus closed his eyes and felt his great-grandfather rolling over in his grave. There's got to be another way. Marcus, I'll call you back. He hung up and stared at the houses of Willowbrook Estates. Sprinklers were running on half the lawns, sending arcs of water across the perfect grass. Here he was, being forced to pay for inferior water. While his neighbors flooded their lawns with the stuff, his phone rang. Sarah, hey babe, how did it go with the inspector? About as well as expected. They're done. It's sealed. Oh, Marcus ... Her voice was heavy with sympathy and exhaustion. Maybe we should think about Tom's suggestion. Peterson's offer really is generous. You want to sell? I want our daughter to stop crying herself to sleep because kids at school are calling her family weird for living in the old house surrounded by the subdivision. I want to stop worrying about money every month. She stopped herself. I'm sorry. I know how much this place means to you. It should mean something to you too. This is where we got married. This is where Lily took her first steps. I know, Sarah said. Finally, the meeting with the principal is at 9. Yeah, I'll get her there. After he hung up, Marcus walked back to the sealed well. The concrete was already hardening in the morning sun. Soon it would be like it had never existed at all. But as he stood there, something nagged at the back of his mind. Something about the geography of the area, about the way the land sloped, about conversations he'd had with his grandfather, about the old days. He pulled out his phone and scrolled through his contacts until he found the number for Eddie Ramirez, the county surveyor, who'd helped him with property line disputes before. Eddie, it's Marcus Chen. I need a favor. Hey, Marcus. Heard about the well situation. That's rough, man. Yeah, well, I'm not done fighting yet. I need you to pull some records for me. Old ones. I want to know about the water rights and easements in this area, and I mean really old, going back to when my great-grandfather first bought the land. Marcus stared at the pristine houses of Willowbrook Estates, with their perfect lawns and wasteful sprinkler systems. I'm looking for leverage. That afternoon, while Sarah was at her meeting and Lily was at school, Marcus drove to the county courthouse. The records department was in the basement, a maze of filing cabinets and dusty boxes that smelled like old paper and bureaucracy. Help you? The elderly clerk looked up from her desk with the expression of someone who'd been disturbed. From something important. I need to see the original property records for this area, Marcus said, sliding a piece of paper across the counter with his address and the surrounding properties marked out. Going back to the 1920s, the clerk squinted at the paper. That's a lot of records. What exactly are you looking for? Water rights? Easements? Anything related to water access or usage? She sighed and disappeared into the maze of files. 20 minutes later, she returned with 3 thick folders. Sign here, she said, pushing a clipboard toward him. You can use table 4. No phones, no food, no drinks. Close the files when you're done. Marcus settled at the designated table and opened the first folder. The papers were old and yellowed, some of them written in a careful script that was barely legible. The emergency hearing was scheduled for 9 a.m. Thursday morning in Judge Patricia Hawthorne's courtroom. Marcus arrived at 8:30, wearing his best suit, the same one he'd worn to his wedding 12 years ago. Tom Patterson was already there, a thick folder of documents spread across the defendant's table. You look nervous, Marcus observed, sliding into the chair beside his lawyer. I am nervous. We're about to go to war with the city, the HOA, and probably half the county. You sure you want to do this? Marcus glanced across the courtroom. The plaintiff's side was crowded. City Attorney James Morrison sat at the lead table, flanked by 2 assistants. Behind them, Marcus recognized several faces from the Willowbrook Estates HOA board, including President Karen Blackwell, sharp-faced woman in her 50s who'd made his life hell for the past 6 months. They brought an army, Tom muttered. Good. Let them see what they're up against. Judge Hawthorne entered, and the bailiff called the court to order. She was a stern woman in her 60s, with silver hair and the no-nonsense bearing of someone who'd spent 30 years cutting through legal bullshit. This is an emergency hearing on the matter of Chen versus City of Millbrook and Willowbrook Estates, HOA, she announced. Mr. Patterson, you filed for emergency injunctive relief. State your case. Tom stood, straightening his tie. Your Honor, my client Marcus Chen is seeking immediate restoration of his family's water rights, which have been violated for nearly 50 years. We're asking the court to order the city to cease unauthorized extraction from the natural spring. Located on property owned by the Chen family since 1923, a murmur ran through the courtroom. Judge Hawthorne banged her gavel once. Mr. Morrison, your response. The city attorney rose smoothly. Your Honor, this is a frivolous claim designed to circumvent legitimate municipal authority. The city's water rights are well established and properly documented. Mr. Chen is simply upset that his illegal well was properly closed according to health and safety codes. Illegal well. Marcus half rose from his chair before Tom pulled him back down. Judge Hawthorne fixed him with a stern look. Mr. Chen, you'll have your turn to speak. Mr. Patterson, present your evidence. For the next hour, Tom methodically laid out the case, the original 1923 deed, the water rights documentation, the city's pumping station construction in 1976, the municipal records showing continuous extraction from the spring dot. With each document, Marcus watched the city attorney's confidence evaporate. Morrison began whispering urgently with his assistants, shuffling through papers with increasing desperation. Your Honor, Tom concluded, the evidence is clear. The city has been extracting water from my client's spring without compensation or permission for nearly 50 years. The recent closure of the Chen family well, which was fed by the same spring, represents an unconscionable taking of private property. Judge Hawthorne studied the documents. Mr. Morrison, do you have any evidence disputing the validity of these water rights? Morrison stood slowly. Your Honor, even if these documents are authentic, the city's usage constitutes adverse possession. 50 years of continuous use establishes adverse possession doesn't apply to water rights in this state, Counselor. You should know that. The judge's tone was icy. Do you have any other response? Marcus watched as Morrison's entire strategy crumbled. The man looked like he'd been punched in the stomach. We request time to review these documents and file a proper response. Time. Judge Hawthorne's eyebrows rose. Mr. Patterson filed for emergency relief, citing immediate and irreparable harm. Mr. Chen, please stand. Marcus rose, his heart hammering. Tell me about this harm, Mr. Chen. Your Honor, my family has lived on that land for 4 generations. The well that was sealed 3 days ago has provided clean water to my family since 1923. My 8-year-old daughter asked me why strangers were allowed to come onto our property and destroy something that belonged to us. I didn't have a good answer for her. And what remedy are you seeking? Marcus glanced at Tom, who nodded encouragingly. I want the city to stop taking my water without permission. I want my family's water rights respected, and I want these people to understand what it feels like to have something essential taken away from you. Judge Hawthorne was quiet for a long moment. Then she looked at Morrison. Mr. Morrison, how much water does the city extract from this spring daily? Morrison consulted his notes with shaking hands. Approximately 2.3 million gallons per day, Your Honor, and this supplies how many residents? The entire Willowbrook Estates development, roughly 847 households. Marcus felt a surge of savage satisfaction. Almost 3,000 people were about to learn what it felt like to lose their water. Your Honor, Morrison continued desperately, if the court grants this injunction, nearly 3,000 residents will be without water. Schools, businesses, a senior care facility should have thought of that before you stole 50 years' worth of water. Marcus said loudly. Judge Hawthorne banged her gavel. Mr. Chen, control yourself. But her tone suggested she wasn't entirely unsympathetic to his position. She reviewed the documents one more time, then looked up at both legal teams. The evidence presented supports Mr. Chen's claim to the water rights in question. The city's unauthorized extraction constitutes a clear violation of those rights. However, the remedy requested would cause significant public hardship. Marcus's heart sank. She was going to side with the city. Therefore, Judge Hawthorne continued, I'm granting a modified injunction. The city will cease all extraction from the spring, effective immediately. However, Mr. Chen, you will permit continued usage for 48 hours to allow for alternative arrangements, after which time you may exercise your water rights as you see fit." The courtroom erupted. Karen Blackwell was on her feet, shouting something about property values. Morrison was frantically taking notes. Tom was grinning like he'd won the lottery. Furthermore, the judge continued, banging her gavel for order, the city will compensate Mr. Chen for 50 years of unauthorized usage at current market rates to be determined by independent appraisal. This court will also order the immediate restoration of the Chen family, well, at city expense. Marcus felt dizzy. He'd actually won, but Judge Hawthorne wasn't finished. "Let me be clear to all parties," she said, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Water rights are not suggestions. They are legally binding property rights that this court will enforce. The city's conduct in this matter has been inexcusable." As the gavel fell, Marcus caught Karen Blackwell's eye across the courtroom. The HOA president's face was twisted with rage, but underneath the anger, he saw something else. Fear. Good, let her be afraid. Outside the courthouse, Tom was practically bouncing with excitement. "Marcus, do you understand what just happened in there? You just won one of the biggest water rights cases in state history. The compensation alone could be millions." "I don't want millions, Tom. I want my water back." "Well, you've got it. In 48 hours, you can shut off their supply completely." Marcus looked back at the courthouse, where Morrison was surrounded by reporters. He could already see the headlines: "Family wins, century-old water rights battle, and city ordered to stop stealing spring water." His phone rang. "Sarah, how did it go?" "We won." Silence. Then, "We won." "Really? Really?" "The judge ordered them to stop taking our water and to pay us back for 50 years of theft, and they have to restore our well." "Oh my God, Marcus. Oh my God," he could hear her crying. "This is really over." "Not quite. I've got 48 hours to decide what to do with their water supply." "What do you mean?" Marcus watched as Karen Blackwell stormed past him toward a black Mercedes, her phone already pressed to her ear. "I mean, I now control the water supply for the entire subdivision, and they're about to find out what it feels like to be thirsty." That afternoon, Marcus drove to the municipal pumping station. It was located on a hillside about half a mile from his property, surrounded by a chain-link fence and marked with city seals. A single technician was working on one of the pumps. "Help you?" the man asked, looking up from his equipment. "I'm Marcus Chen. As of this morning, this is my water you're pumping." The technician's face went pale. "You're the guy. Jesus, man. They've been calling us all day. My supervisor's freaking out." "Good reason to freak out. In 48 hours, I'm shutting this down. Look, I just work here, okay? I got nothing to do with whatever went down between you and the city." Marcus nodded. "I'm not mad at you, but I want you to understand something. See that development down there?" He pointed toward Willowbrook Estates, where the identical houses stretched out in neat rows. "Every drop of water in those pipes comes from my family's spring. Has for 50 years without anyone asking permission." The technician followed his gaze. "That's a lot of people, man. Kids, old folks, ... My daughter's 8 years old. 3 days ago, she watched strangers come onto our property and destroy something that had been in our family for 100 years. You think she understood why that was happening?" The man was quiet for a moment. "So what happens Friday morning?" Marcus looked at the pumping equipment, then back at the subdivision. Every house had perfect green lawns. Swimming pools glittered. In backyards, sprinkler systems were already running, preparing for the evening watering cycle. Friday morning, they learned what it's like to turn on a Marcus woke up at 4 a.m. Friday morning to the sound of his phone ringing. Unknown number. "Hello, this is Channel 7 News. We're wondering if you have any final comments before you shut off the water supply." Marcus hung up without answering. The phone immediately rang again. "Different number. Mr. Chen, this is the mayor's office. Mayor Davidson would like to speak with you urgently about reaching a compromise." He turned off the phone and walked to the kitchen window. The street was already lined with news vans, their satellite dishes reaching toward the pre-dawn sky. Like metallic flowers, reporters stood in clusters, checking equipment and sipping coffee from paper cups. Sarah appeared beside him in her robe, holding 2 mugs of coffee. "Second thoughts?" she asked quietly. Marcus took the coffee and looked. Out at Willowbrook Estates, porch lights were beginning to flick on in the identical houses. People getting ready for work, starting their morning routines, completely unaware that in 3 hours their water would stop flowing. No second thoughts. Sarah nodded. She'd made her peace with this decision last night, after they'd talked for hours about what it meant for their family, their future, and the principle at stake. "The school called," she said. "Lily's going to stay home today. Too much media attention." "Good. I don't want her dealing with this circus." At exactly 7 a.m., Marcus walked to his truck and drove to the pumping station. A small crowd had already gathered, city officials, reporters, and a few residents from the subdivision. Tom Patterson was there with his briefcase, looking like a man who hadn't slept. "You don't have to do this," Tom said as Marcus approached. "I got 3 calls last night from the city attorney. They're willing to negotiate. I'm sure they are now." The city technician from yesterday was standing by the main control panel, looking miserable. His supervisor, a heavy-set man in a city uniform, stepped forward. "Mr. Chen, I'm Ray Kowalski, Water Department Supervisor. Look, I know you got every legal right to do this, but there's got to be another way. We got elderly people in that development. Kids, you should have thought about that before you helped them cement." "My well shut? I didn't have nothing to do with that." That was the inspector's office, following HOA complaints. Marcus looked at the man's face and saw genuine distress. This wasn't some bureaucrat protecting his turf. This was a working man trying to do his job. "Ray, right? Yeah, Ray, I don't have anything against you personally, but for 50 years, your department has been taking my family's water without asking. My great-grandfather paid for the rights. To that spring in 1923, every drop that's been pumped out of here since 1976 was theft. I understand that, but do you have kids, Ray?" The supervisor nodded. "2 daughters. If someone came to your house and destroyed something that belonged to your daughters, something that had been in your family for generations, what would you do?" Ray was quiet for a moment. "I'd probably want to hurt them back. That's all I'm doing, hurting them back." Marcus walked to the control panel. The technician stepped aside without a word. The main shutoff valve was clearly marked "protected" by a lock that Tom had already arranged to have legally removed. "Any final words for the cameras?" a reporter called out. Marcus looked directly into the lens. "My family tried to coexist peacefully with this development for years. We never bothered anyone, never complained about their noise, their construction, their impact on our quiet rural life. All we asked was to be left alone." He placed his hand on the valve. "Instead, they decided our family's heritage was an eyesore. They used lawyers and bureaucrats to destroy something that had sustained for generations of my family. Now, they get to see what it's like to lose something essential." Marcus turned the valve. The effect wasn't immediate. The system had pressure, residual water in the pipes, but within minutes, the flow meters began dropping. Within an hour, every faucet in Willowbrook Estates would run dry. "It's done," he said, stepping back from the control panel. The crowd was silent except for the clicking of camera shutters. Then, Ray Kowalski's radio crackled to life. "Dispatch to Unit 7, we're getting calls about water pressure dropping in Sector 12. Copy that. Dispatch. We're aware of the situation." More radio chatter. The calls were starting to come in. Marcus climbed into his truck and drove home, leaving the chaos behind. But as he turned onto his street, he saw that the circus had only gotten bigger. News vans now lined both sides of the road. A police car was parked in front of his house. Officer Dave Martinez was standing on his front porch, talking to Sarah. Marcus had known Dave since high school. They'd played football together. "Morning, Marcus, Dave." Marcus climbed the porch. "Steps. Problem. Well, I got to ask. You really just shut off water to 3,000 people?" "I exercised my legal right to control my own property." Dave shook his head. "This is going to get ugly, man. I already got reports of people stockpiling water, price gouging at the grocery stores. There's talk of a protest march this afternoon. Let them march. They're protesting on public property. They can march all they want." "Marcus," Sarah interjected, "maybe we should consider." She was interrupted by the sound of squealing tires. A convoy of vehicles was racing down the street, news vans, trying to keep up with a black Mercedes that Marcus recognized immediately. Karen, Blackwell jumped out of her car before it had fully stopped, her face flushed with rage. Behind her came several other HOA board members, followed by a crowd of residents. "You son of a bitch," she screamed, marching toward the porch. "You actually did it." Officer Martinez stepped between her and Marcus. "Ma'am, you need to calm down. Calm down. This maniac just cut off water to 800 families. There are children who can't brush their teeth, elderly people who need water for their medications. There are stores in town," Marcus said calmly. "They sell bottled water." Bottled water. Karen's voice rose to a shriek. "Do you have any idea what this is going to cost? What this is going to do to our property values?" More residents were gathering, their voices rising in anger. Marcus recognized faces from around the neighborhood, people he'd waved to for years, people whose children played with Lily at the community park. Mr. Chen called out a woman he didn't recognize. "My mother is 87 years old. She lives in the senior complex. How is she supposed to get water?" For the first time since turning the valve, Marcus felt a flicker of doubt. But then he remembered the concrete ceiling his well, the dismissive way the city inspector had treated him, Karen Blackwell's threats. "The same way my family would have had to get water if we'd been forced to move," he said. "You figure it out." "This is unconscionable," said another resident. "We'll sue you into bankruptcy. Good luck with that. I've got 50 years of theft." To collect on the crowd's anger was building, and Officer Martinez looked increasingly nervous. "Folks, I need everyone to step back," he said, his hand moving to his radio. "This is private property." "Private property?" Karen laughed bitterly. "He's holding 3,000 people hostage over private property. He's enforcing legally recognized water rights that were violated for half a century," Tom Patterson said, appearing at Marcus's side. "Rights that a judge confirmed yesterday." "We'll see about that," Karen snapped. "I've already got calls in to the state attorney general, the governor's office, and every media outlet in the region. By tonight, the whole country will know what kind of man Marcus Chen really is." "Good," Marcus said. "Let them know. Let them know that sometimes when you push a family too far, they push back." The confrontation might have escalated further, but Officer Martinez's radio crackled with an urgent call. "All units, we have a disturbance at Millbrook Elementary. Parents demanding the school provide water for students." Dave keyed his radio. "En route." He looked at Marcus. "This is just the beginning. You know that, right?" As the police car pulled away, the crowd on Marcus's lawn began to disperse. But not before Karen Blackwell delivered one final threat. "You want a war, Chen? You've got one. But you picked the wrong neighborhood to mess with." By noon, the situation had spiraled beyond anything Marcus had anticipated. The local grocery stores had run out of bottled water. A water delivery truck had been mobbed by desperate residents. The mayor had called an emergency city council meeting. Marcus was watching the coverage on TV when his phone rang. The caller ID showed his daughter's school. "Mr. Chen, this is Principal Watson. I'm afraid we're having some difficulties here." "What kind of difficulties?" "Some of the students have been, well, they've been saying things to Lily about the water situation. We think it might be best if you picked her up early today." Marcus felt his jaw clench. "What kind of things?" "Name-calling, mostly. Some of the parents are understandably upset, and I think the children are picking up on that tension." "I'll be right there." Marcus drove to the school, through streets that looked like a disaster zone. Cars lined up at every working water fountain. Emergency water distribution points had been set up in parking lots. National Guard trucks were rolling into town. At the school, he found Lily sitting in the principal's office, her face streaked with tears. "What happened, sweetheart?" "They said, we're bad people," Lily whispered. "They said you're trying to hurt their families." Principal Watson, a kind woman who'd been at the school for 20 years, looked uncomfortable. "Mr. Chen, I understand you're—" Part 4. The breaking point. The rock hit the window at 7:43 p.m., followed immediately by shouting from the street. Marcus peered through the blinds to see at least 50 people gathered on his front lawn, their faces illuminated by the harsh lights of news cameras. "Chen, come out here, you coward," someone yelled. Sarah grabbed Lily and pulled her away from the windows. "We need to call the police." Marcus was already dialing when another rock struck the house, this one hitting the front door with a loud crack. 911. What's your emergency? This is Marcus Chen at 1247 Oakwood Road. There's an angry mob on my property throwing rocks at my house. Sir, we have units en route. Please stay inside and away from windows. But even as he spoke to the dispatcher, Marcus could see the crowd. Growing larger, cars were pulling up constantly, disgorging more residents from Willowbrook Estates. Someone had brought a bullhorn. Marcus Chen. The amplified voice cut through the night air. You have 24 hours to restore our water, or we're going to make your life as miserable as you've made ours. Through the window, Marcus spotted Karen Blackwell at the center of the crowd, talking animatedly to a man with a news camera. Daddy, I'm scared, Lily whispered from where she crouched behind the couch with Sarah. Marcus felt something cold and hard settle in his chest. Threatening him was one thing. Threatening his family was something else entirely. His phone rang. Officer Martinez. Marcus, we're 2 minutes out, but I need you to stay calm. Don't go outside. Don't engage with them. Let us handle this. They're throwing rocks at my house, Dave. My daughter's terrified. I know, and we're going to disperse them. But if you come outside right now, this could turn into something much worse. Through the blinds, Marcus watched as police cars began arriving, their red and blue lights washing over the crowd. But instead of dispersing, the protesters seemed energized by the attention. This is what democracy looks like. Someone chanted, and others picked up the call. Officer Martinez and 3 other cops waded into the crowd, trying to establish order. But Marcus could see this was different from the morning's confrontation. These people weren't just angry, they were desperate. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Your family isn't safe. Last warning. Marcus deleted the message, but took a screenshot first. Evidence outside, he could hear Officer Martinez on his bullhorn. This is private property. You need to disperse immediately or face arrest for trespassing. We're not leaving until he turns our water back on. Karen Blackwell's voice carried clearly through the night air. This man is holding children hostage. Marcus's phone rang again. Tom Patterson? Marcus? You need to see the news. Channel 7 just ran a story about a 2-year-old who was hospitalized for dehydration. The parents are saying it's because they couldn't get water for formula. That's impossible. The water's only been off for 12 hours, and there are stores selling bottled water all over town. Doesn't matter if it's true. It's what people believe. And right now, they believe you're putting children in danger. Marcus looked at his own child, huddled behind the couch, and felt the weight of the comparison. Tom, I need you to do something for me. I want you to file a restraining order against Karen Blackwell and the HOA board. Harassment, threatening, behavior, trespassing. That's going to take time, then file for emergency relief. They're on my property right now, threatening my family. Outside, the police seemed to be making progress. The crowd was gradually moving back toward the street, though they weren't dispersing entirely. Marcus could see people setting up lawn chairs and coolers. They were settling in for a siege. Sarah appeared at his side, having left Lily with a coloring book in the back bedroom. This can't continue, Marcus. We can't live like this. It won't continue. Either they'll get tired and go home, or the police will arrest them. And tomorrow, and the day after that, what happens when Lily has to go back to school? Marcus didn't have an answer for that. By 10 p.m., the crowd had thinned, but not disappeared. About 20 diehards remained on the street, maintaining what they called a water vigil. News vans continued to arrive throughout the evening. Turning the quiet residential street into a media circus, Marcus tried to put Lily to bed at her normal time, but she was too frightened to sleep. Are the angry people going to hurt us? She asked as he tucked her in. No, sweetheart. The police are here, and they won't let anyone hurt us. Why are they so mad? How do you explain to an 8-year-old that sometimes doing the right thing makes people hate you? Remember when you were little and you wouldn't share your toys, and I took them away to teach you a lesson? Lily nodded. Well, these people have been playing with something that didn't belong to them for a very long time. And now I'm teaching them the same lesson. But they're grown-ups. Grown-ups shouldn't throw rocks. You're right, they shouldn't. But sometimes grown-ups act like children when they don't get their way. After Lily finally fell asleep, Marcus and Sarah sat in their kitchen, listening to the muted sounds of the protesters outside. The governor called while you were putting Lily to bed. Sarah said quietly, What did she want? To negotiate. She's offering full compensation for the 50 years of water usage. plus payment for restoration of our well, plus a formal apology from the city and the HOA. Marcus looked at his wife, and we keep our water rights, but we allow the city to continue using the spring under a formal lease agreement. Fair market rates, paid annually. It was, Marcus had to admit, a reasonable offer. More than reasonable, was everything he'd initially wanted, plus recognition of his family's rights. What did you tell her? I told her I'd discuss it with you. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Outside, someone was playing musica guitar and voices singing what sounded like protest songs. They destroyed our well, Sarah. They treated us like squatters on our own land. They made our daughter cry because she was different. I know. And now, the minute they face consequences for their actions, suddenly everyone wants to negotiate. Suddenly, our rights matter. So what are you saying? Marcus looked toward the window, where the glow of cameras and streetlights created an eerie orange haze. I'm saying they should have thought about negotiating before they cemented our well. Shut. Sarah was quiet for a moment. Then, Marcus, I love you. I love that you're fighting for our family, for your grandfather's legacy. But I'm scared. Scared of what? Scared of what it's doing to Lily? Scared that we're becoming the kind of people who hurt children to make a point. We're not hurting children, aren't we? Sarah's voice was soft but firm. That little girl in the hospital, whether it's really our fault or not, she's someone's daughter, someone's Lily. Marcus felt something twist in his chest. So what do you want me to do? Just give up. Let them win. I want you to win, but I want you to win without becoming someone our daughter can't be proud of. Before Marcus could respond, his phone rang. Officer Martinez again. Marcus, we've got a problem. Someone just tried to break into the pumping station. What? 3 guys with bolt cutters trying to turn the water back on themselves. We caught them, but barely. And there's talk on social media about more organized action tomorrow. Marcus felt his stomach drop. What kind of organized action? Mass civil disobedience? People are calling for everyone to march on your property at noon tomorrow. Could be hundreds of people. Can you stop them? Not if they stay on public property. And Marcus, there's something else. Someone spray-painted your truck. Marcus looked out the window toward his driveway. Sure enough, someone had tagged the side of his pickup with red paint. Water thief. We're going to post a patrol car in front of your house tonight, Martinez continued. But Marcus, you need to think seriously about resolving this. The situation is escalating beyond what we can control. After hanging up, Marcus sat in his kitchen, staring at his coffee cup. Everything was spiraling out of control. What had started as a principled stand for his family's rights was turning into something ugly and dangerous. His phone buzzed with another text, this one from a number he recognized, Karen Blackwell. Check the morning news. You're about to become famous for all the wrong reasons. Marcus turned on the TV and flipped to the all-news channels. The story was already breaking on the national feeds. This is a developing story out of Millbrook, where a dispute over water rights has escalated into what some are calling an environmental hostage situation. The CNN anchor was saying, Marcus Chen, a local resident, has cut off water supplies to nearly 3,000 people, including children and elderly residents, in what he claims is a property rights dispute. The screen showed aerial footage of Willowbrook Estates, the perfect suburban development now marked by emergency water, trucks, and portable toilets. Local officials report that several residents have been hospitalized for dehydration-related issues, and there are growing concerns about sanitation and public health as the crisis enters its second day. Marcus muted the TV and looked at Sarah. There, making me the villain. Are you surprised? 3,000 people without water, and you're the one who turned off the valve. I'm the one whose property was stolen for 50 years. I know, and you're right. But, Marcus, being right doesn't always mean you win. Sometimes being right just means you get to what?